The conference room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. I placed my resignation letter on the polished table, hands steady despite my racing heart. "I'm leaving to start my own business," I said quietly. My boss Louis looked up from his phone, eyebrows raised. Then it started, a low chuckle that grew into full-blown laughter. Not just him, but 3 other managers joined in. The sound bounced off the glass walls like bullets. "Rita," Louis wheezed, wiping his eyes. "You're kidding, right? Your own business?" He leaned back in his chair, still grinning. "What kind of business could you possibly run?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks but kept my voice calm. "Home decor. Handcrafted pieces." Another wave of laughter erupted. Louis shook his head, looking at me like I'd just announced plans to become an astronaut. "Jesus, Rita, you're 51. This isn't a Hallmark movie." The words hung in the air like poison gas. I stood there, watching their amused faces, feeling smaller with each passing second. But something else was building inside me. Something they couldn't see. 19 years. That's how long I'd given this company. 19 years of arriving early, staying late, fixing everyone else's mistakes. I'd been the safety net, the problem solver, the one they called when fires needed putting out. I remembered my first week, eager and hopeful at 32. I'd pitched creative ideas, volunteered for challenging projects, dreamed of climbing the ladder. Instead, I became invisible furniture. "Rita's reliable," they'd say during performance reviews. "Never innovative or leadership material. Just reliable, like a stapler or a coffee machine." I'd watched younger employees get promoted over me, fresh graduates with shiny degrees and confident smiles. They'd last 2 years, maybe 3, before moving on to bigger things. But I stayed, loyal as a golden retriever. Last month, I'd overheard Louis talking to the new VP. "Rita? She's furniture at this point. Been here forever, does her job, nothing more." Furniture. After nearly 2 decades of dedication, that's what I'd become, a piece of furniture that occasionally filed reports and answered emails. That night, I'd gone home and stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. When had I become so small? The notebook sat on my kitchen table like a forgotten treasure. Faded blue cover, spiral binding coming loose. I'd found it while cleaning out my spare bedroom closet. Inside were pages of sketches, fabric swatches, color combinations, drawings of lamps made from driftwood, tables crafted from reclaimed barn doors, planters shaped like vintage suitcases. My handwriting filled the margins with excited notes and measurements. I'd started this journal 11 years ago during a particularly boring weekend. The ideas had poured out of me like water from a broken dam. I'd imagined a cozy studio, my hands creating beautiful things, customers smiling as they unwrapped my work. But Monday morning always came. Back to the gray cubicle, the endless meetings, the slow suffocation of routine. My friend Barbara had been visiting when I rediscovered the notebook. She'd flipped through the pages, eyes widening. "Rita, these are gorgeous. Why did you stop?" I'd shrugged, suddenly embarrassed. Life got in the way. "This is real talent," she'd insisted, holding up a sketch of a lamp made from old books. "You could sell these." Could I? After all these years of playing it safe, could I actually take such a leap? The monthly strategy meeting dragged on like dental surgery. Louis droned about quarterly projections while I doodled lamp designs in my notepad margins. "The Henderson account is struggling," he announced. "Anyone have ideas?" I raised my hand. "What if we reposition their brand around sustainability? Their target demographic cares about environmental impact." Louis's expression soured. "Rita, we need practical solutions, not feel-good buzzwords." The room shifted uncomfortably. I felt my cheeks burn, but pressed on. "It's not buzzwords. Millennials and Gen Z drive purchasing decisions. Sustainability sells." "Let's stay focused on real strategy," Louis said dismissively. 2 hours later, I watched him present my exact idea to the client. Word for word, he soaked up their enthusiasm, accepting praise for the brilliant insight. Afterward, he cornered me by the elevator. "Next time, leave the big picture stuff to people who understand the business," he said with a condescending smile. I nodded silently, but inside, something cracked. 20 years of swallowing pride, accepting invisibility, being treated like a child. The notebook at home felt heavier in my memory. That night, I added a new sketch to its pages. October 15th. My 51st birthday arrived like any other Tuesday. I sat at my desk, checking emails, waiting for someone to remember. Anyone. By lunch, the silence was deafening. I'd always made sure to acknowledge others' birthdays, cards, small gifts, genuine wishes. Today, I ate a sad sandwich alone in the break room. No cards, no happy birthday texts from colleagues, not even Lewis's assistant, who managed everyone's birthday calendar. I stared out the window at the parking lot, watching people hurry to their cars. When had I become so forgettable, so utterly insignificant? The tears came during my commute home. Sitting in traffic, I sobbed for the years I'd wasted, the dreams I'd buried, the woman I'd let disappear. But as I pulled into my driveway, something shifted. The sadness hardened into determination. I walked straight to my kitchen table and opened the blue notebook. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote, Fern and Foundry Business Plan. Then I drew a line under it and wrote something else. 1 year from today, I'm done. 51 wasn't too old. It was exactly the right time to start over. For 3 months, I lived a double life. By day, I remained dutiful Rita, the reliable furniture. By night, I became a student again. I enrolled in online courses, small business marketing, crafting your brand story, financial planning for entrepreneurs. I watched YouTube tutorials on woodworking, studied Pinterest boards obsessively, read every craft business blog I could find. My spare bedroom transformed into a workshop. I bought basic tools, testing wood stains on scrap lumber. My first attempts were disasters, crooked cuts, uneven stains, wonky joints. But slowly, carefully, I improved. I reconnected with my college friend Maria, now a successful interior designer in Chicago. Over wine and video calls, she encouraged my ideas, even offered to mentor me. You have an eye for this, she said, examining photos of my early pieces. There's a market for authentic, handcrafted home decor. The mass-produced stuff is losing appeal. Late one Tuesday night, I filled out paperwork to register Fern and Foundry as a business name. My hands shook as I hit submit. I was really doing this, planning my escape from 19 years of invisibility. The secret felt dangerous and thrilling, like carrying dynamite in my purse. You've plateaued, Lewis said during my annual review. No small talk, no pleasantries, just brutal honesty delivered with his signature smirk. There's really no path up for you here, Rita. He paused, pretending to search for diplomatic words. You're in your comfort zone. That's fine for some people. I sat across from his massive desk, hands folded in my lap like a scolded child. The words stung, because part of me had always believed them. However, he continued, we do have something exciting for you. We're bringing in fresh talent. A bright young hire named Jessica, 26, MBA from Northwestern. She'll be joining as your supervisor. My supervisor? A woman half my age with zero industry experience would now manage me. The irony was suffocating. I'd like you to train her, Lewis added cheerfully. Show her the ropes, share your institutional knowledge. Think of it as mentoring. Mentoring my own replacement. Teaching someone else to succeed where I'd been told I couldn't. Is that all? I asked quietly. That's all. Oh, and Rita, I hope you'll embrace this change. Fresh perspectives are exactly what this department needs. I walked back to my cubicle, Lewis's words echoing in my head. Fresh perspectives. From a 26-year-old who'd never worked a day in this industry. 4 months later, I sat in that same conference room, resignation letter in hand. The circle was complete. I'm leaving to start my own business, I repeated calmly, watching their amused faces. Lewis's laughter filled the room again. Home decor? Really? At your age? Yes, I said simply. Rita, come on. Be realistic. You've got a good thing here. Steady paycheck, benefits, security. Why throw that away for some midlife crisis hobby? The other managers nodded in agreement. Safe, predictable Rita would never take such a foolish risk. I'm not having a midlife crisis, I said, standing up. I'm starting my life. Lewis chuckled again, that same dismissive sound that had haunted my nightmares. New at this age? You must be kidding. I picked up my resignation letter and placed it squarely in front of him. Then I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. We'll see, I said. The laughter followed me out of the conference room, down the hallway and into the elevator. But it didn't hurt anymore. It sounded like the distant barking of a dog I'd already left behind. My studio apartment felt smaller, with all the equipment crammed inside. Workbench, saw, sanders, stacks of reclaimed wood. I'd spent my entire savings on this setup. Every penny from 19 years of careful budgeting. I stared at my laptop screen. Bank account balance, $11,500. enough for 9 months of rent and basic expenses. After that, I'd either be successful or homeless. The weight of what I'd done crashed down like a landslide. I'd quit my job, burned my bridges, bet everything on a dream I'd sketched in a notebook. What kind of middle-aged woman throws away security for such uncertainty? My phone buzzed with a text from Barbara. "How's the first day of freedom?" Freedom. That's what this was supposed to feel like. Instead, it felt like standing on a cliff edge, wondering if I could fly or if I'd just fall. I opened the blue notebook, flipping through pages of sketches and dreams. Each drawing represented hope, creativity, the person I'd always wanted to be. Then I picked up a piece of sandpaper and got to work on my first official piece, a small table made from barnwood. My hands moved carefully, methodically. This was my leap of faith. Time to see if I could fly. 6 weeks of grinding, sanding, staining, and praying. My hands were permanently stained brown, my back ached constantly, but I'd created something beautiful, a reclaimed wood centerpiece with hand-forged iron details. I listed it on Etsy for $125, photographed from every angle, wrote a heartfelt description about sustainable craftsmanship. Then I waited. Days passed. Views, but no buyers. I refreshed the page obsessively, checking sales statistics, tweaking keywords. Doubt crept in like fog. Then, Tuesday morning at 7:23 a.m., the notification chimed. "You have a new order." My hands shook as I read the buyer's message. This is exactly what I've been searching for. Can't wait to see it in person. I packaged the centerpiece like it was made of spun gold, tissue paper, custom labels, a handwritten thank you note. I drove to the post office with trembling excitement. 3 days later, another notification. A review. Absolutely gorgeous. The craftsmanship is incredible. This piece makes my dining room feel like home. Already planning my next purchase. 5 stars. But the real magic happened when she posted a photo on Instagram, tagging a local home design magazine. Found this gem from @FernandFoundry. Obsessed. My phone started buzzing with notifications, followers, likes, comments from strangers. I'd made my first sale. The dream was real. The email arrived on a Thursday morning. "Hello, I run a local home and lifestyle blog called Midwest Modern. We'd love to feature your centerpiece in our Hidden Gems series." My heart nearly exploded. Within a week, the blog post went live with professional photos of my piece in a stunning farmhouse kitchen. The article called my work "Authentic Craftsmanship in an Era of Mass Production." Orders started trickling in. 2 centerpieces, a custom coffee table, 3 sets of floating shelves. I worked 14-hour days learning to price properly, manage deadlines, communicate with customers. Each piece left my studio like a child going to college, carefully packed, lovingly labeled, sent into the world with hope. My bank account slowly climbed from terrifying to merely scary. I reinvested every penny into better tools, higher quality materials, improved packaging. The blog feature led to more blog features. A local newspaper mentioned me in their small business spotlight. My Instagram followers grew from 12 to 300. Late one evening, as I applied the final coat of stain to a custom dining table, another email popped up. "Hi Rita, I own 3 boutiques in the Chicago area. Would you be interested in wholesaling your pieces?" I set down my brush and read the message 3 times. This was really happening. The text from my former coworker Susan made my blood run cold. "Rita, I need to warn you. Lewis has been telling everyone you left us high and dry on the High Rocks project, saying you quit right before the big presentation and screwed over the whole team." I stared at my phone in disbelief. The High Rocks project? I'd completed every deliverable 2 weeks before leaving, left detailed handover notes, even offered to train my replacement remotely. But Lewis was rewriting history, painting me as the villain who abandoned ship. Classic corporate politics. Blame the person who isn't there to defend herself. Susan's next message was worse. He told the client the delays were because Rita walked out without warning. They're pretty upset. My hands shook with rage. 19 years of loyalty, and this was how my story ended? Branded as unreliable, selfish, unprofessional? I wanted to call Lewis, defend myself, set the record straight. But I realized something important. It didn't matter anymore. His opinion, their gossip, the whole toxic ecosystem I'd escaped, none of it could touch me now. I was building something new, something honest. Let them spin their lies in their glass conference room. I had work to do. I picked up my sandpaper and got back to creating beauty. The email signature read, Lewis Matthews, Senior Vice President. The same Lewis who'd laughed at my dreams, now reaching out with barely concealed desperation. Rita, hope you're well. We have a short-term consulting opportunity that might interest you. The Henderson account, you remember your great work there, needs someone with institutional knowledge. 3-month contract, excellent pay. We really miss your expertise. I read it twice, marveling at the shamelessness. 6 months ago, I was furniture. Now I was an expert they desperately missed. My first instinct was anger. The audacity of asking for help after humiliating me, after spreading lies about my departure. But then I felt something unexpected. Pity. They were struggling without me, scrambling to fill the knowledge gap I'd left behind. All those years they'd taken me for granted, and now they were learning my true value. I clicked reply and typed, "Thank you for reaching out. Unfortunately, I'm busy building my empire and won't be available for consulting. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Best of luck." I hit send and smiled. Building my empire. 6 months ago, that would have sounded delusional. Today, it felt like simple truth. My phone buzzed with a new order notification, a $400 custom bookshelf. Back to work. Success brought new problems. Orders were piling up faster than I could fill them. Customers waited 3 weeks for pieces that should take 1. My hands were developing stress fractures from repetitive motions. I faced a terrible choice: turn away business or risk disappointing customers. Both options felt like failure. That's when I remembered Lisa, a single mom from my old neighborhood who'd been laid off from her accounting job. She'd mentioned wanting to learn woodworking, looking for something creative after years of spreadsheets. I called her on a Tuesday night, heart pounding. "Lisa, this might sound crazy, but would you be interested in part-time work? I need help with my business." "Are you serious?" Her voice cracked with emotion. "Rita, I've been applying everywhere. Nobody wants to hire a 43-year-old woman with a gap in employment." "I want to hire you," I said. 20 hours a week to start. I'll teach you everything." The next morning, Lisa stood in my studio, eyes wide with possibility. "I can't believe you're giving me this chance." "We're giving each other a chance," I corrected. Training her felt different than my corporate days. No politics, no hidden agendas, just 2 women building something together. Within 2 weeks, Lisa was sanding and staining like a pro. My production doubled, quality stayed high, and I had my first employee. The spring artisan expos sprawled across 3 warehouse buildings, filled with handmade soaps, pottery, jewelry, and furniture. My booth looked tiny among the established vendors, but I'd invested everything in making it beautiful. I arranged my pieces carefully. The signature centerpiece that started it all, floating shelves, a coffee table with hairpin legs, and my newest creation, a room divider made from salvaged window frames. Saturday morning brought curious browsers, polite compliments, and 0 sales. I smiled until my face hurt, explaining my process to anyone who'd listen. Then, around 2 p.m., a woman in an expensive blazer stopped at my booth. She examined each piece carefully, running her fingers along the wood grain, checking joints and finishes. "You made all of these yourself?" she asked. "With my assistant, yes. Everything's handcrafted from reclaimed materials." She pulled out a business card. Mildred Langston, buyer, Eco-Style Retail. My heart stopped. Eco-Style was a national chain focused on sustainable home goods. "You've got something special here," she said, taking photos of my inventory. "The craftsmanship is excellent, and the aesthetic fits our brand perfectly. I'll be in touch." She walked away, leaving me speechless in my tiny booth. "You've got something special here." Words I'd waited 51 years to hear. 2 weeks after the expo, disaster struck. My wood supplier delivered warped lumber. A shipping company lost 3 packages. A customer complained about scratches that appeared during delivery. I was drowning in problems, burning through money on replacements and refunds. The stress kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was fooling myself. The breaking point came when a large order, 6 matching dining chairs, had to be canceled due to production delays. The customer was understanding but firm. They needed the chairs for a housewarming party and couldn't wait another month. $4,000 in lost revenue. I stared at the completed chairs in my studio, beautiful and unwanted. That night, I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by unsold inventory, feeling like a fraud. Maybe Lewis had been right. Maybe this was just a midlife crisis, a foolish gamble that was destined to fail. I picked up my phone to call Barbara, to admit defeat, to ask if she knew any companies hiring middle-aged ex-employees. But instead, I found myself reading customer reviews. Rita's work transformed our home, the most beautiful piece we own. Incredible attention to detail, real people, real appreciation. I wiped my tears and picked up my sandpaper. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, handwritten on cream-colored stationery. Dear Rita, I had to write to tell you how much your coffee table means to our family. After my divorce, my house felt empty and sad. Your beautiful piece was the first thing that made it feel like home again. Thank you for creating something so special. Susan. I read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. This was why I'd taken the leap, not for money or recognition, but to create meaning, to touch lives in small but significant ways. I looked around my studio at the unsold chairs, the mounting bills, the stress that had been crushing me. All of it suddenly felt manageable. I picked up my phone and started making calls. New suppliers, shipping alternatives, customer outreach. If one door closed, I'd find 10 others. By evening, I'd secured a backup lumber source, negotiated better shipping rates, and scheduled meetings with 3 local galleries interested in featuring my work. The chairs sold that weekend to a designer who'd seen them on my Instagram. She bought all 6 and commissioned 12 more for a restaurant project. Sometimes you have to almost give up to remember why you started. The email subject line made my heart race. Feature opportunity, women over 50 in design. A prominent design website wanted to spotlight female entrepreneurs who'd started successful businesses after 50. The interview was scheduled for Thursday. I spent 2 days cleaning my studio, organizing my best pieces, practicing answers to potential questions. The photographer arrived first, a young woman named Amy, who moved through my space like it was a museum. This is incredible, she kept saying, capturing angles I'd never noticed. The journalist, Patricia, asked thoughtful questions about my journey, my inspiration, my advice for other women considering late career changes. What would you tell your younger self? She asked. That it's never too late to become who you're meant to be, I answered. The feature went live the following Tuesday. The headline read, Fern and Foundry, How Rita Transformed Discarded Wood into Dreams at 51. Within hours, my phone was ringing constantly. Orders, interview requests, collaboration proposals. My website crashed from traffic. But the best part was the message from Margaret at EcoStyle. Saw the article, Let's Talk Partnership. The woman who'd been called Furniture was now being featured in furniture magazines. The Chicago Design Conference buzzed with energy. Vendors, designers, and buyers filled the convention center, networking over coffee and Danish. I'd invested in a larger booth this time, displaying my evolution from simple centerpieces to complex furniture systems. Lisa helped me set up, both of us giddy with nervous excitement. That's when I saw him. Lewis, walking down the aisle with a small group, stopping at booths, playing the important executive role he'd perfected. Our eyes met across the crowded space. He stopped mid-sentence, staring at my booth like he'd seen a ghost. I watched him approach, his confident stride faltering slightly. The group followed, curious about what had captured his attention. Rita, he said, genuine surprise in his voice. This is your business? Hello, Lewis, I replied calmly, continuing to arrange inventory. He examined my pieces, his marketing brain obviously calculating prices, profit margins, market positioning. This is really impressive, professional quality, I nodded. Thank you. He lingered awkwardly, clearly wanting to say more but unsure how to proceed. Finally, wow, you actually did it. Yes, I said simply. I did. Lewis returned the next morning, alone this time, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He offered me one with an uncertain smile. Rita, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. This is really remarkable what you've built. He gestured around my booth. The quality, the branding, the customer response, it's all first rate. I accepted the coffee, but remained silent, letting him fill the awkward space. Look, I'll be honest. We made a mistake letting you go. Your institutional knowledge, your work ethic, we underestimated your value. He paused, seeming to gather courage. I want to offer you something. creative director position. Salary would be significantly higher than what you were making. Full benefits, equity participation, your own team. I set down my coffee and looked at him carefully. 6 months ago, this offer would have felt like vindication, proof of my worth. Now it felt like a life preserver thrown to someone who'd already learned to swim. I appreciate the offer, Louis, I said gently. But I'm not here looking for a desk anymore. His face fell. Rita, think about it. Security, stability, a real salary. I have security, I replied. I built it myself. He walked away shaking his head, unable to understand why anyone would choose uncertainty over a steady paycheck. The magazine arrived on a Tuesday, glossy and thick with autumn design trends. I flipped through pages of celebrity homes and designer spotlights until I found it. A 4-page spread titled 10 Women Over 50 Redefining American Design. There I was, third profile, standing in my studio, surrounded by my creations. The photographer had captured the warm wood tones, the natural light, the quiet satisfaction on my face. The article traced my journey from corporate drone to successful entrepreneur, emphasizing the courage required to reinvent yourself at 51. The journalist had woven in customer testimonials, sales figures, and my philosophy about sustainable craftsmanship. The quote that ended the piece made me smile. I was told it was too late to dream. I proved them wrong. My phone rang within an hour of the magazine hitting newsstands. Barbara was crying. Rita, I'm so proud of you. You're an inspiration. Then Maria called from Chicago. Girl, you're famous. My clients are asking about your work. Orders flooded in from across the country. People who'd read the article, seen my story, connected with the message that reinvention has no expiration date. I looked around my studio, now bustling with activity as Lisa and I worked to fill orders, and marveled at the journey. The leadership training facilitator held up a printout, addressing the room of middle managers. This is what courageous reinvention looks like. Rita Martinez, featured in this month's American Home Design, left corporate America at 51 to start her own business. Louis sat in the second row, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. His face drained of color as he recognized the photo, read the headline, absorbed the implications. Around him, other participants nodded admiringly. 51 and starting over? That takes guts. Look at that workshop. She's built something amazing. The facilitator continued. Too often we tell ourselves it's too late to change, too risky to pursue our dreams. Rita's story proves that courage has no age limit. Louis slumped in his chair, the irony crushing him. The woman he'd mocked, dismissed, laughed at, was now being held up as an example of leadership courage. His colleague leaned over. Do you know her? This Rita Martinez? Louis nodded slowly, unable to speak. Lucky you, the colleague whispered. Must be inspiring to know someone who took such a leap. Louis stared at the magazine photo, remembering his laughter, his cruel words, his absolute certainty that Rita would fail. The training continued, but Louis heard nothing else. The phone call came from Susan, my former coworker, her voice barely containing excitement. Rita, you're not going to believe this. The Hyrox account dropped us. I set down my coffee, processing the information. I'm sorry, Jen. I know you worked hard on that project. No, you don't understand, she laughed. They dropped us for you. Well, not exactly you, but they specifically mentioned wanting to work with a more modern, values-based brand. Guess which brand they chose? My heart stopped. Fern and Foundry? Fern and Foundry. The client loved your story in the magazine, said it represented exactly the kind of authentic, sustainable approach they wanted for their new headquarters. The contract was worth more than I'd made in my last 2 years at the consulting firm. Alana Properties wanted custom furniture for their entire executive floor, tables, chairs, storage systems, art installations. There's more, Susan continued. 3 other clients have asked about you. Louis is having an absolute meltdown. After we hung up, I sat in my studio, surrounded by the hum of sanders and the smell of wood stain. Lisa looked up from her workbench. Good news? The best news, I replied, pulling out my project planning notebook. My former client was now my client. The circle was complete. The LinkedIn message appeared in my notifications on a Thursday morning. Rita, congratulations on your incredible success. Saw the magazine feature, truly inspiring. Let me know if you ever need support or want to reconnect. Louis. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no desire for revenge. Just emptiness where old wounds used to be. I screenshotted the message and showed it to Lisa, who was helping me sort through the Alana contract details. She burst out laughing. Are you kidding me? The same guy who laughed at your dreams now wants to reconnect? The same guy, I confirmed. What are you going to reply? I considered my options. A scathing response about his treatment of me. A gracious acceptance of his belated recognition. A detailed explanation of how his dismissal had motivated my success. Instead, I closed the message without responding. Some conversations don't deserve to happen. Lisa shook her head in amazement. You're a better person than me. I would have written a novel. I don't need to, I said, returning to my sketches. My success is response enough. The message sat in my inbox, forever unread, forever unanswered. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. The team dinner took place in my expanded studio, now twice the size of the original space. Warm light spilled from the handcrafted pendant lamps hanging above our table, one of my own designs. Lisa sat beside me, her teenage daughter Emma across from us. Emma had started helping with social media after school, bringing fresh energy and digital expertise to our growing operation. We'd hired 2 more part-time craftspeople, Marcus, a retired carpenter who brought decades of expertise, and Diane, a former teacher who discovered woodworking during her empty nest phase. To Rita, Lisa raised her glass of sparkling cider, foreseeing potential where others saw problems. To all of us, I corrected, looking around the table at these remarkable people who'd become family. For building something together. We clinked glasses, and I felt something I'd never experienced in 19 years of corporate life. Pure contentment. No politics, no hidden agendas, no measurements of worth based on age or pedigree. Just honest work, mutual respect, and the daily satisfaction of creating beauty from discarded materials. Through the studio windows, I could see the city lights twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there, Louis was probably in another meeting, managing another crisis, laughing at someone else's dreams. And that laugh? I heard it differently now, like the last breath of a man who never learned to dream.